time of unrest here in Omaha, which they call riots. You know, anytime you got more than 3 people in a group causing disturbance, they can name it a riot. But it was quite a bit more, though. When I came on, it was kind of reverse. They asked me a question, where do you want to work? Well, of course, I felt more comfortable working in minority neighborhoods, so they put me in West Omaha Millard area. Okay? So, only thing is when you work your home area, which you guys call your hood and all those things, you know everybody, and as a police officer, you gotta let your friends and everybody else know that if they're in trouble, my job is to enforce the law. You guys read about Governor Wallace, he was here. There was a lot of unrest throughout the whole United States because he was running as elect, possibly be the president. And there was a lot of turmoil throughout the whole United States, and he came to Omaha. So a squad of us, 2 squads, were assigned to the old city auditorium, a lot of detention in that area. I got hit in the head with a chair. Didn't go down. I led what they call the wedge. Didn't know where I was half the time. The officers were holding me up, and we got things settled. And by the way, I was the only officer that asked the captain, "Captain, are we going to wear helmets today?" He said, "No, we don't want people to think that we're down here to bust people up and all, you know, like that." And I got hit in the head. I could have been, hurt seriously, paralyzed.
At that time, the police department, not only in Omaha but nationwide, were predominantly made up of white males. In the 1970s, I think we had maybe between 17 and maybe 30 African-American police officers at any given time. Had hired a lobbyist who would go down to Lincoln and fight for issues on the part of the police union. And what happened was their lobbyist, who was also a Nebraska state legislator, they were debating the aspects of open housing. People could buy a house in Omaha property in the place that they want. They had set against him. And the African Americans, were kind of torn, because here we are paying into our union to represent our interests, and they were going and they were fighting against our interests. So the decision was made to draft a letter to the union to let them know how displeased the officers were about their opposition to the open housing legislature. The decision was made to withdraw formally from the police union. And not only that, because of some of the things that were going on, the union wasn't fairly representing minority officers within the police, AFL-CIO, and they listed in chronological order and in great detail some of the problems they were experiencing with our union at that time. And after an investigation, the AFL-CIO kicked the Omaha Police Union out of the AFL-CIO, which was unheard of at that time.
So I came in during an era where, in part a result of a consent decree, as a result of litigation, also during an era when there was interest in diversifying the police department, and the integration wasn't necessarily voluntary. It was somewhat forced upon the city by the federal courts. In addition, affirmative action was the rule of the land, and it really provided an opportunity for minorities to become employed. One raised in North Omaha, and race relations were a little bit strained at the time between the African American community and the police department. And one of my first duty assignments upon graduation from the police academy was the neighborhood where I grew up in. So it was a rather we're a small geographic area. However, I come to find out that it was one of the busiest districts in the city. And so we also had a very high call load. It was a very relatively high crime rate. And I learned a lot in terms of how to be a police officer, while at the same time balancing the idea that I had to be very professional, I had to treat people with dignity and respect. Benefited quite a bit from the sacrifices that were made by individuals that preceded me. And I believe you may have talked to a couple of the veteran officers that I would have been hired in that era, late 60s, early 70s, that probably endured more overt discrimination than I would have experienced as we were hired in the mid-80s. But recognizing that these guys made tremendous sacrifices. They were mentors to me, and so I felt a certain indebtedness to those who preceded me, because I felt as if I was standing on their shoulders, if you will. And I took a lot of pride in the fact that had it not been for individuals brave and very courageous that initiated that litigation, that I may not have had an opportunity to ascend not only to the rank of chief of police, but to be hired and be afforded some of the job opportunities that I had throughout my career process. And so I always felt that it was important for me to work extremely hard to prepare myself for each opportunity, whether it was a job assignment or a promotional examination, that I would be representative of not only my race, but my family and my family's name. And so I would say that I was always conscious of the fact that race may have been a factor or a consideration whenever I was applying for a job assignment or pursuing a promotional opportunity.
Was following the footsteps of my dad, Foxall II, and he started on the police department in 1953, and also following in the footsteps of my great uncle, Pittman Foxall I, and he started on the police department in 1938. So those were huge shoes to fill, and they had such good rapport in the community. And as a young person, I remember that they were very well respected, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't do anything to ruin their great reputation that they had established over the years of being an Omaha police officer. 30 plus years ago, it's gotten better. Nothing's ever going to be perfect, but it's better than it was 30 years ago when I started. Oh my gosh, back in 1953 when my dad started, 1938 when my great uncle started. Have I ever been discriminated against? Oh, sure. I think anybody that's walking around has suffered discrimination. By that time in your career, you pretty much know everybody in the police department. It's funny, they say when you start on the job, halfway through your career, you know everybody, and then when you're ready to retire, you don't know anybody anymore. So, we work with good people, and you maintain those relationships throughout your professional career. I have very fond memories of the police department, not only during my tenure, but also when my dad was on. Years in the business, some of us have retired on, some of us have moved to different locations within the criminal justice industry, and I'm very proud of the time I spent in the police department, the legacy left behind by my family, and I look forward to working with those folks in the future.